Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive.
Yeah.
So today, we're going to be looking at some excerpts from Democracy and Education by John Dewey.
All right.
Have you ever read an A.D. Dewey before?
I have.
I haven't, but
Yeah.
I've heard a lot about him.
He's very influential.
And he's supposed to be very important, and it's one of those books
Well, yeah.
you always hear about, but never really get around to it. So
Yeah.
I'm excited to finally dive in.
Yeah, Dewey's ideas are super relevant, even though he was writing like over 100 years ago.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
He's got this fascinating view of education,
Yeah.
like the glue that holds society together. Like,
So not just like the individual,
right.
but like how society transmits its knowledge
Yeah.
from one generation to the next.
Exactly. And he said
Yeah.
a society doesn't just exist biologically.
Right.
It needs to actively pass its wisdom on to new members.
So like a renewal,
Yeah.
constantly renewing itself
It's a constant renewal process.
through education.
That's right.
And he also said that education isn't confined to those formal settings, like a classroom.
Yeah, every interaction, every conversation,
Even reading a book.
even reading a book can be an educative experience.
So it's not just about memorizing facts in a classroom,
Not at all.
which is kind of what I thought.
Well, that's how we traditionally think of it. But
Yeah.
Dewey had this really radical idea
Yeah.
that real learning happens when we interact with our environment.
Mhm.
You know, try things out, see what happens.
Yeah.
He calls it trying and undergoing.
Drying and undergoing.
And that's how we make sense of the world.
And it's funny because like so many times in my life,
Yeah.
like I've learned more from my mistakes
Totally.
from just being told the right answer.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Like if I do something wrong
Yeah.
and then I realize, oh, I shouldn't have done it that way, then I learn from that way more
Yeah. Yeah. It's much more impactful.
than just being told the right way.
I think there's a saying about that.
Yeah, I think it's
Something like,
I hear and I forget, I see and I remember. I do and I understand.
yes, exactly.
So yeah, that's what that makes me think of is that
Yeah, Dewey was way ahead of his time.
he was ahead of his time in a lot of ways.
Understanding how we really learn.
Yeah.
This isn't just about filling your head with facts.
Okay.
It's about actually doing things and experiencing the consequences.
So how did Dewey think education evolved over time?
Well, he pointed out that early societies relied on informal learning. You know, like
Yeah.
kids just participated in adult activities.
So they would just observe and imitate.
They would learn by watching and doing.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense for a very simple society.
Yeah.
But our world is so much more complex now.
Right. And that's where
Yeah.
formal education systems came in.
Right.
As societies developed, they needed a way to pass on all that accumulated knowledge and skill.
Right.
So the big challenge for Dewey was,
Right.
how do we keep formal education engaging
Yeah.
and connected to real life?
Yeah.
How do we prevent it from becoming just a bunch of disconnected facts?
Mhm.
You know, things you memorize for a test and then forget.
So it's like, how do you make sure that what you're learning is useful
Right.
in the real world?
Yeah, that you can actually apply it.
Because otherwise, why bother?
Yeah. And that brings up another question.
Okay.
If education is so powerful, could it be used to control people?
Ooh.
It's a sharp question.
Yeah, it's a little bit scary too.
Yeah, Dewey definitely recognized that the environment we're in shapes our minds and behaviors. Think about it, the activities we participate in,
Yeah.
the responses they evoke,
Yeah.
those all shape who we become.
So in a way, we're always being influenced.
To some extent, yes.
Yeah, but is that always a bad thing?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
And I think for Dewey, he believed that the most effective kind of social control
Yeah.
isn't about force or coercion.
Yeah.
It's about creating a shared understanding and purpose. So he saw a big role for language and shared activities in this process of shaping our minds.
So it's more about like shaping our values and perspectives
Yeah.
than like dictating our actions.
Exactly.
Okay, but couldn't that still be manipulative?
Oh, absolutely.
That's a great point.
Yeah, like who decides what
Right.
those shared values should be?
You're hitting on a key point that Dewey grappled with.
Okay.
He talked about schools providing a simplified and purified environment
Yeah.
to highlight what's valuable. But that raises questions about who gets to decide what's valuable and what gets left out.
Right.
What perspectives are we prioritizing?
Yeah. That's a bit unsettling, to be honest.
Yeah, it is a bit unsettling.
Because it makes me think about like different cultures and communities
Right.
might have very different ideas about what should be taught.
Exactly. And that's a tension
Yeah.
that Dewey wrestled with.
Hmm.
This tension between individual growth
Yeah.
and social responsibility.
So he didn't want to neglect essential skills and knowledge,
Yeah.
but he also worried about an overly narrow focus on social efficiency.
So what did he mean by social efficiency?
Well, he was concerned that focusing too much on practical skills
Yeah.
and economic output
Yeah.
could become materialistic.
Okay.
Ignoring the need for individual fulfillment and cultural richness.
Yeah, so it's almost like those factory model schools that you sometimes hear about.
Exactly.
Where it's just like
right.
churning out graduates.
Yeah, just churning out workers for the economy
Yeah.
without considering their individual needs and their potential.
Yeah, so it's like finding that sweet spot where we're both contributing to society,
Right.
but also developing as individuals.
It's a balancing act.
But that makes things so much more complex.
It does.
Like, how do you achieve that balance?
Well, that's where things get really interesting.
Yeah.
Dewey believed that one of the keys lies in understanding how we learn from imitation. Oh.
Which is a bigger topic than it might seem at first glance.
Yeah. So are we talking about like kids just copying what they see adults doing?
Well, Dewey had a more nuanced view than that.
Okay.
He argued that blindly copying actions doesn't lead to real learning.
Okay.
It's about imitating the means to a desired end.
Okay.
Not just the end itself.
Okay. I think I'm starting to get it.
All right.
So it's not just about mimicking,
No.
but understanding.
It's about understanding the why and the how behind what someone's doing.
Yeah, so it's like learning the strategies, not just the outcome.
Exactly.
Okay.
And this leads right into one of Dewey's big ideas, the role of the environment in learning.
Okay.
And we'll talk about that more next time.
Sounds good. I'm excited.
Yeah.
All right, everyone, we will see you for part 2.
See, sir. So we were talking about the environment and how it shapes learning. And Dewey believed that this kind of active learning
really thrives in the right environment.
Okay, so we're not just talking about like the physical.
Well, not just the physical surrounding.
Like a classroom.
Right. But everything that interacts with our natural inclinations to do things.
Okay, so the tools we have access to.
Yes.
People we interact with.
The ideas floating around.
Not even the ideas.
All of it.
Wow.
All of that shapes how we learn.
So it's much more complex than just like
very complex.
Being in a classroom.
It's not just about the physical space.
Right.
It's about the whole context.
And Dewey thought that a stimulating environment packed with tools and resources developed by previous generations could accelerate learning.
He did.
Which makes sense.
Yeah, like we're standing on the shoulders of giants.
Yeah, but wouldn't that also make it harder to figure out what to focus on?
That's a great point.
Yeah, because there's so much out there.
There's so much.
Like, how do you sift through it all?
Right, and that's where education comes in. Dewey argued that education should provide a sort of simplified, purified, and balanced environment.
Okay, so it's like cutting through the noise.
Cutting through the noise.
And highlighting what's most valuable.
Exactly.
But who decides what's valuable?
Ah, there's the rub.
Yeah, because that gets back to that potential for control that we were talking about earlier.
You're spot on.
Yeah.
Dewey was very aware of that potential pitfall. He spent a lot of time thinking about the aims of education.
Okay.
And he noticed that 3 common aims often clash.
Okay, what are those?
Natural development, social efficiency, and culture.
Okay, break those down for me.
All right, so first, natural development. Dewey thought that just focusing on natural development could lead to neglecting certain skills and knowledge that are crucial for participating in society.
So it's not enough to just let kids learn whatever they happen to be interested in.
Right, you need some guidance.
Okay.
You need some structure. But on the flip side, he was also wary of social efficiency as the sole aim.
Okay.
If you only focus on external results, on churning out workers, you risk creating a system that's too materialistic.
Right. So you're ignoring
the
individual's needs and potential.
Right.
It's like squeezing them into a box.
Yeah, fitting them into a predetermined mold.
And then there's culture.
Yes, culture. What did you say about that?
Well, Dewey believed that if you view culture as purely internal, it becomes isolated and loses its relevance to the real world.
Okay, so it's not just about appreciating art and literature for their own sake.
Right.
It needs to be connected to how we live our lives.
Exactly. It needs to have a practical application.
Okay.
So you can see how these 3 aims,
they can be in tension.
they can pull in different directions.
Yeah.
It's a complex interplay.
So how did Dewey propose that we navigate these competing aims?
Well, for Dewey, education was all about growth.
Okay.
He saw it as a lifelong journey
Hmm.
of learning and development.
So not just reaching an endpoint, but always expanding your horizons.
Exactly. Always growing.
I love that.
Yeah, it's a beautiful idea.
But how does that actually play out in the real world?
Well, he redefined social efficiency in a fascinating way.
Okay, how so?
He said it's not just about being productive in a narrow sense. It's about having the skills to participate in shared activities and contribute meaningfully to society.
So being able to work with others, solve problems together,
elaborate,
make the world a better place.
Exactly.
Okay.
And he saw culture as the ability to perceive and appreciate a wider range of meanings, which ultimately enriches your personal experience.
So it's not just knowing facts.
No.
It's about understanding.
Understanding different perspectives.
Appreciating beauty.
Connecting with things on a deeper level.
Yeah, that's much more holistic.
It's a much richer view of culture.
So Dewey believed that education should cultivate all of these things.
He did, but he also understood that learning can't happen in a vacuum.
Right.
And he had some powerful ideas about the role of interest.
He did.
And that's where I get a little skeptical.
Okay.
Because isn't the whole make learning fun thing a bit overblown?
I hear you.
Like some things you just have to learn.
Yeah.
Whether you find them interesting or not.
And Dewey wasn't just talking about making learning fun.
Okay.
In a superficial sense.
Okay.
He was talking about something deeper.
Okay.
Genuine engagement with the subject matter.
Okay, so like real interest.
Real interest.
Not just like surface level entertainment.
It's about that spark, that connection.
So how do you do that?
Well, Dewey believed that real interest reveals a connection between you and the activity, a glimpse into your true motivations.
So it's not about forcing kids to learn things they hate.
No.
But about finding ways to spark their curiosity.
Yes.
And connect with their passions.
Exactly.
Okay, I can get behind that.
It's about finding what makes someone's eyes light up and using that as a springboard for learning.
I remember when I first discovered.
Yeah.
Well, actually, maybe that's a story for another time.
Okay, we'll save that for later.
But it definitely reminds me of those moments where you get so absorbed in learning something, you lose track of time.
Dewey would say that's a sign of genuine interest at work.
He would. Absolutely.
And that's where his ideas about thinking and experience come in.
Exactly.
So last time we were talking about Dewey's ideas about how we learn. The aims of education.
Right. All those competing aims.
Yeah. And it got me thinking, if Dewey were alive today, what would he think of our current education system?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
Dewey was writing in the early 20th century.
Okay.
A time of massive change.
Yeah, kind of like today.
Kind of like today, exactly.
Yeah.
So much information technology advancing so rapidly.
Right.
And everything's globally connected. It's a lot to keep up with.
It really is.
So do you think he'd be like excited by all this or terrified?
Probably both.
Both, yeah.
I mean, Dewey was all about adapting education to the needs of the times.
Okay.
I think he'd be blown away by the possibilities.
Okay, like what?
Personalized learning, global resources at your fingertips.
Okay.
New ways to collaborate.
Yeah, that sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, it's amazing.
But you said both.
Oh, yeah.
So what about the downsides?
Well, remember how Dewey stressed that it's not enough to just soak up information?
Right.
You need to think critically,
Yeah.
connect the dots, figure out how to use what, you know.
So it's not just knowing more stuff.
No.
It's about like knowing what to do with that knowledge.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
He called it intelligent action.
Intelligent action. I like that.
And I think he'd be worried
that
our education system is struggling to keep pace with how fast things are changing.
Because like the skills you need to succeed are changing so quickly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Think about it this way.
Okay.
Imagine someone learning how to use a hammer 100 years ago.
Correct, yeah.
Pretty straightforward, right?
Yeah.
But today,
there's all kinds of power tools and...
Power tools, specialized techniques, safety considerations.
Yeah, it's way more complicated.
It's a whole different ball game.
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
Yeah.
So how do we make sure the kids are learning those deeper skills?
Right.
Like the critical thinking, the problem solving.
Yeah, how to filter out all the noise.
Yeah.
That's the million-dollar question.
It is.
And I think Dewey would have a lot to say about the role of technology in all this.
Okay.
On one hand, it's an incredible tool.
Right. You were saying all the cool things it can do.
It can tailor learning to your individual needs, connect you with people across the globe, open up whole new ways to explore ideas.
But there's that other hand.
There's always another hand.
What were you saying about the potential downsides?
Well, technology can also be a massive distraction. It can spread misinformation faster than wildfire.
Yeah.
And if we're not careful,
it
can actually widen the gap between those who have access to great educational resources and those who don't.
Yeah, that's a really important point.
It is.
So it's not like a magic bullet.
No, it's not a cure-all.
You have to be really intentional about how we use it.
Dewey would absolutely agree with you there. He'd probably say, we need to use technology as a tool to support those deeper learning goals.
Okay.
Not just as a shiny new toy.
Right, so it's about how you use it.
Exactly.
But you know what else has me thinking?
What's that?
We're living in a time where things feel really divided.
Yeah, it's a very polarized time.
Yeah, polarization.
Yeah.
Social media echo chambers.
Everyone's talking past each other.
Yeah, it's like...
That's tough.
It's hard to even have a conversation sometimes.
It is.
So where does Dewey's emphasis on social responsibility fit into all of this?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think Dewey's ideas are more relevant now than ever. Remember how he talked about education fostering a sense of shared purpose?
Yeah.
Building bridges between people?
Right.
Helping us participate in democracy in a meaningful way?
Yeah, but wouldn't some people say that his focus on individual experience kind of clashes with the need for collective action?
That's a really interesting point.
Yeah.
And it's a tension that runs through a lot of Dewey's work. He recognized that individual growth is important.
Yeah.
But he also believed that it needs to be connected to a wider social purpose.
So it's not just about me getting ahead.
No.
It's about figuring out how we can all move forward together.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that takes more than just teaching civics or having kids memorize the Constitution.
Right.
Dewey would say we need to cultivate those habits of mind that make democracy work. Critical thinking, empathy, open-mindedness. The ability to have tough conversations without tearing each other apart.
This is starting to feel like a pretty tall order.
It is a tall order.
So are you saying like Dewey would want us to completely overhaul our entire approach to education?
I think he'd be pushing us to rethink the fundamental purpose of education.
Okay.
He'd challenge us to move away from seeing it as just a stepping stone to something else.
Okay.
Good job, a college degree, whatever. And start seeing it as a process of growth, exploration, and social transformation.
Yeah, I'm getting fired up here.
Me too.
This is a really powerful vision.
It is.
But where do we even begin to make that kind of shift?
Right, that's the challenge.
Yeah.
And Dewey wasn't big on handing down rigid blueprints.
Okay.
He believed that the details of education would always need to be adapted to the specific situation, the community,
the learners.
The learners themselves.
Yeah, so there's no like one-size-fits-all solution.
No.
But if Dewey were sitting here with us right now, what advice would he give us?
I think he'd offer some guiding principles.
Okay.
First, he'd say, start with experience.
Okay.
Make learning about real-world problems. Yeah. Things that matter to students.
Okay.
Things they can connect with personally.
Make it relevant to their lives.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Well, he also say, tap into genuine interest.
Okay.
Find what sparks a student's curiosity and use that as a springboard for learning.
Okay, so it's not about making everything easy or fun all the time.
No.
It's about like finding those points of connection.
Exactly. Those things that make someone's eyes light up.
And
Finally, he'd remind us of the power of social interaction. Create learning environments where students can work together.
Yeah.
Bounce ideas off each other.
Okay.
Learn from each other's strengths.
Yeah.
Build that sense of community and shared purpose.
It's a beautiful idea.
It is.
Dewey's vision of education is really inspiring.
It is.
It's about empowering individuals, strengthening communities, and ultimately creating a more just and democratic society.
That's the goal.
It is a lofty goal.
It is.
And while putting all of his ideas into practice is no easy feat.
No, it's a challenge,
Yeah.
but I think it's a challenge worth striving for. Even small changes can make a big difference.
Okay.
A new approach to a lesson.
Yeah.
A different way of organizing your classroom. A conscious effort to connect learning to real-world issues.
Yeah.
These things can ripple outward.
They can.
And have a real impact.
Okay, so for all of you listening, I want to leave you with this challenge.
Yep.
How can you apply these insights in your own life?
That's the question.
Yeah, whether you're a student, a teacher, a parent,
I'd say one.
Or just someone who loves to learn.
Yeah.
Dewey's ideas have something to offer all of us.
Absolutely.
And Dewey himself wrote, Education is not preparation for life. Education is life itself.
Powerful words.
Yeah. So keep learning, keep growing.
Yes.
And keep those questions coming.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for being here.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, this has been a really fascinating deep dive.
It has.
All right, everybody. We will see you next time.
See you later.